So I recently released this new game, Move Counters That Get More Cursed, and this video will actually cover the whole game and all the content in it. I'm kind of surprised, but also glad to see how many people played it, as well as multiple devs like the Lockpick inventor and the Poke All Toads inventor, and one of the developers who made a block-pushing themed move counter meme game. First of all, not optional, you must type Chess Battle Advanced. This game being about move counters, this counts how many times the thing is moved, and each of them has their own count, so you can see the total is going up by 2 in this level, and there's the target 30. Now you can fail the target and go over it. So we need to restart and intentionally hit a wall with one of them, so now the counters are different. Now here's the counter that counts the number in the row, so as the red counter moves, you can see it go up. So we just need to do this in like a single row, just move left and right to add the counter without messing with the rows. Well, everything seems normal so far. Here's a level with a limited move count on the top right, and we need to get to that bottom section to get the target all the way up to 30. Now, here is the first meme level, and it's all downhill from here. So we only have one move left, so gotta restart. That doesn't work. Nope, okay. So, like, it needs to clearly go into this spot, but how do you do that? Target's all the way up at 21. Alright, here's the reveal. You can, first of all, you can hover over this, but also... I remember being concerned during testing, like, how many people would fall for this and only get it there. That's why I need to type the chess battle into the start so your cursor is down here. And my first two testers, one of which was Chris Souvey, whose name will come up a bunch in this freaking video. And this glow is like twice as large, and apparently it just seemed too clickable, so I think it's good now. There's a good amount of people who will just think this game is WAS controlled. Now here's something that's more of an actual puzzle. Now, of course, you can bring stuff out, but this is only 14 total, so you could also try to move one of the zero counters out of the way, but this is also 14. So I have seen some people get stuck on it, but there's actually multiple ways to make... Well, I didn't even know it was possible to get 16 on this level. But you can get 15 in multiple ways. There was someone who did a screenshot where you did this swapping move, and then you go up and down. Wait, apparently that's not how you do it. Here. There. The one that I did was like this. That was... I keep asking... What do you mean 16? Anyway, so that's 15. Many ways to do it. And now, 2 moves left. But notice that because, like, let's say you try to move right, of course the other one doesn't move. And no matter what, your first move can never move 2 of the counters at once. You can only do here and get a total of 3. What you have to realize on this level is that swapping between the two counts as both of the counters moving. Like, even though there's no, like, there's not quite a visual look, you are swapping them around, much like you could swap them around in the previous level. So, those count as 2, and you just do that. Now, we have a level without any movable counters with WASD. This is using some row counters. You just need to get the row counters to see each other. That will make both of them a 2. But now, target's 3. And so, it seems like it could only either be 2 or 4 as the total. Well, the joke here is, and you could have found this in previous levels as well, but you see the total... It kindly shows you what's part of the total, but more importantly... So that's how you can make it so the row counters don't need to see each other. It can see one of these instead. And now in this level, the target is 0, and it's... So this level is basically about... You have to read the description as well. Like, the total does not count the white background stuff, so it can't, like, count the target or something stupid. And also, they don't count on the top row as well, which means that if you put it there, it will not be part of the total. So this number is not part of the total, and they're not on top... They don't count as part of the total either because they're not on the top row. Anyway, I literally, like, I keep wanting to make games about UI memes, and apparently I still don't have enough of it, because I'm still not satisfied even after completing making this game. And perhaps it's too easy to find, like, around here, the counters being in the top right is dangerously close to hitting the moves left counter, especially here. I would assume there's a lot of people who actually accidentally find this. In one of my other videos, I talk about a designer who's made some other games and also made one of the best Lingo custom mechanic types. Like, it literally spawned like an entire genre of puzzles with that amazing mechanic, and here a reaction clip of that.
What? Does that even do it? Does that even help me in the puzzle?
No.
That's just to say you can always do it? Okay. What?
That was like one of the earliest versions of the game. Maybe you'll spot some changes. But anyway, next level is diagonal counter. It would make sense to put everything on the long diagonal, but note that you don't want to have anything on the top row because then it doesn't count, so you need something more like this. There we go. Now the target is 0, so all the diagonals have to avoid seeing stuff. And in fact, putting stuff in the edge is actually kind of a good way to do it as well, because that one technically does see someone by diagonal, but it doesn't count because it's not on the top row. However, now we have puzzles with row counters, and those will always be 1 or above, so we need to put it there. And this being a genuine puzzle is fun because people can ask, like, can you get, people can ask for help, and it turns out it's just a normal puzzle. And solution is something like this. There we go. Okay, so now time for the description memes to come up. Counter counts the count of encounters in this encounter. Very necessary. Of course, we need to shove them all to the top row. Now we have the counter, which counts the count of counters that count counters in this encounter. And the counter, which counts the count of counters that count the count of counters that count counters in this encounter. Hover is very useful here. But also, some counters that are a little different. Like, this counts the count of counters 2 counts of squares away from this counter. So that's actually one of the first moves, because that allows it to see 3 counters, which are 2 counts away. We just need 2 more counts, so let's move this counter nearby the counter that counts the counter near this counter. There we go. And now we have a red counter, which counts some red pixels in the 4 adjacent cells. Here, we can move it just as well, so that's 200, so you see that when it moves, like, it's a total of 100 per nearby red counter. So just put it nearby 2 of them, and there we go. This is 501 now. So note that if you do this, it says 202 because we moved to with the WASD controls. Finally, we can put red counters next to other red counters and incredibly inflate the score. I believe you can get like 600 in this level. But if you move this and then you just add 1 more red counter, intentionally moving the move counter so it gets +1 as well. There we go. But now, 405. The red counter can only have 4 adjacent cells, but there's only 3 other red counters in the level, so, I mean, it doesn't seem possible. So, you can even do this. That gets you to 305, but you still have 1 move left, and the question is, of course, where do you get the remaining red counter from?
Yep. Okay.
Chess battle advanced. So yeah, the solution is just do this, move it there, and then do any invalidated move to make it red. Should mention, I implemented, like, coded these ideas in order of appearance. My code's actually kind of bad, and rearranging levels took effort because I numbered all the levels in the code. So I'd have to rechange the numbers every time I wanted to reorder something, so I just never reordered much of anything. Anyway, here we have the move counter, which counters your ability to move anything. And the N counter, which counts the count of N's on the page, both lowercase and uppercase. So that means it changes depending on the tooltip that you have selected. So in that case, the total count is the one you need. Now for this one, by the way, the description also impacts it. You need to hover over that one. And now there's the encounter counter, which counts the count of encounters you've encountered this session. But unfortunately, it's 36, which is too high for the target. Also, when you change encounters, it changed. And now, I was gonna have something, I didn't find a way to make it work in an interesting way, but you can clearly see there's also an interaction where it is only visible on even numbers. I was wondering if there's some parity stuff that I could do, but I didn't think of any cool idea with it. Anyway, the point is, you gotta refresh the page in order to, now don't ever go back to a previous encounter. It does save your progress, so there we go. Now, of course, if you go back and forth through levels, it'll go up again, but it will save it. Now here, it needs to be 9. So for this level, you have to notice that you've been, well, first of all, okay, this is something I want to talk about. Kind of dumb, but, like, maybe this shouldn't have necessarily been in the game, but you can't previous encounter if you've won the level, which could have some possibilities of getting stuck, unable to go back to previous encounters, which is a freaking weird idea for a puzzle restriction. Anyway, the thing I wanted to actually point out is that the tooltip stays between levels, which means that you can bring a tooltip from some other level, like the row counter. So now the total will be different and not normally accessible. So now we need a low target, remember? So how about the zero counter, which has barely any no description, but there's an N in zero counter. So let's bring that in there, and that wins the level. But now the target is 8, which is even less. So you need to get rid of the tooltip description, because like how else do you get rid of the N that was still in there? Well, how about this? I'm gonna press F5. And now there's no tooltip on the screen. So that was the point of the encounter counter level, which I felt like it would be too unfair to do that without at least like having to do that first. So even though it's a little bit silly that you do the exact same thing to finish one level as to do the other, it's the way that I thought of to make it fair, and it seems to have went okay. Now we need a really high target. So what's a counter that has a lot of N's in the description? Well, how about the one that was really, really long that used the word counter a bunch of times? But now we have 26, and there certainly isn't a counter that makes it even more high than this. So now what? Well, let's just focus on one particular word. Sounds. There's 2 extra N's right there. Also, you don't get the satisfaction of hearing the wind sound effect. And this level is an easy win. Although it's the first one that introduces the row counter counterpart, which, for being so simple, is used in so few levels. Anyway, to go back to that level, this was actually like one of the I think this was the very last change I ever did to this game before I made some mistakes with the end counter, so I'm just not gonna fix the game. Because there are some bugs that are funny that I'm not fixing, because I'm too paranoid about the end counter ruining things. I changed it when the awesome letters plus every pence digital penthouse writer asked for a clue on this level, and I couldn't convince myself that it sounded fair, because it was volume counter at some point. It started as sound volume, then went to volume counter, because I thought, oh, that makes it seem more like a clickable relevant element. But I think ultimately sound volume was better because the word is just literally right there, which I can't say for volume counter. Anyway, here, it's just a genuine level. We have an area counter, which, I mean, it's very easy to make the area counter high, just connect it to form one big island. So, I mean, of course, if it's within its own island like that, it's only like one, it's like, that's not very insightful. And this level also introduces the all line counter, which counts counters in the same row column diagonals, like a combination of all of them. And yeah, target used to, well, it was 125, because that was the highest I could get. I found some 128 solution, and it was changed to that for a bit, then I changed it back because it was too hard, I guess. But I feel like it's to me, like, my solutions look like something like this, where the columns are all in one, like the rows are all in one, it just makes sense. And now the diagonals want to be on this long diagonal. That one's pretty good as a 6, but also allowing it to hit this. Okay, and to be honest, there is a bunch of screwery with that. Here's the 128 for the cheaters out there. And by the way, this game got so many weirdo, proud cheaters. Even some go, oh, I had to cheat. Wow, freaking 4 IQs over here. Like, it's insane. Isn't it obvious if you can solve multiple levels the same way every time using developer web tools that not everyone knows, you don't read the game's description. It's so hard to take others seriously nowadays. This is what also caused Christopher Suavier to make a game in response to those cheaters. Also, I just beat 100 puzzle script games in a row by spamming next level. I'm such a genius. Please donate $50 to my channel. Anyway, next level. Definitely a really original puzzle idea. Here we use the all line counter. Very nice counter there. It has such a nice color scheme on the target counter. By the way, this level doesn't have a total counter, because I couldn't find a way to fit it in. Okay, so I feel like the pattern is like kind of obvious and intuitive, but like placing the, like, it does multiple solutions, and like it's it's easy to mess it up, like, not quite seeing that, like, these are connected, but there we go, like, that's one of the solutions. I would have preferred if the total counter was there, because there's this interesting thing where you could have a target up there. I mean, you could have a counter that's all the way up there, and then, of course, it does have a number on it, but then it would, like, imagine that it only saw the target counter and the total counter, so none of them would get in each other's way, because the target counter is special in, like, it doesn't count upwards towards it. But I think it's not actually, there's just no solution with the total counter in the level, so all you get is that very original puzzle. Anyway, now we have some more row counters, and 2 moves left. Well, that's not very improvable. 35 target. Also, come to think of it, one of the row counters doesn't really look like it's correct. And if you hover over it, it says, counts how much you've moved the same counter in a row. And, like, if you move this around, that goes to 2. 1, 2. And it goes back to 1. It usually stays at 1, so pretty weird behavior, right? What does it mean to move the same counter in a row? Well, the counters, unfortunately, this puzzle doesn't work 100% as cool as it could be, because of the way that it loses progress when you reset. Like, it doesn't look like, because it still says 2, but if I move it again, it'll go back to 1. And it seems like even if you do know what this counter does, you only have 2 moves left in this level, so, like, how would you get this counter to be any higher than 2? Well, I said in this level. So let's go back to the previous level. If I move it like 6 times, I just move that counter 6 times in a row. Row counter. Okay, so of course 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's how much you need to move it in order to get that to work. Now we have a level in a genre that I really enjoy. Because, okay, so we need to get +6, and we have 2 moves. Also, this move counter. It used to be called a global move count, but that ended up feeling potentially inconsistent. So its name is just move counter again, which makes it the 3rd counter called the move counter in this game. But yeah, of course, we have these row counters, and it seems like you can't get anywhere near 31 with this. So, the joke of this level, the genre is the mechanic you forgot existed. So if we go back, and we have to go quite a bit back, to a level like this one, the distinction, like, even very early on, was actually that the things with this blue glow means you can move it with WASD. And arrow keys. So you use that to make it really high. Now, of course, we need to move this into play because that's on the top row and doesn't count normally. So now, of course, if I move upwards, I'll get +5, as it counts globally +5 of each of them moving. Now, this level, I'll mention this later on because the game mentions it later on, but this is actually a new level in the sense that it wasn't part of the original 35. The original 35, it was a lot worse. It looked like this, it wasn't that interesting. And this one is a much better setup for, so we have the area counter, we have a 10 target, so, but with only 1 move left. Doesn't this look impossible? Like, if you move it from here to here, that doesn't increase the target by enough. Although, this moves left count is a bit weird. I mean, okay, it just changed there, but that doesn't seem like what a moves left counter should be doing. Let's hover over it. Counts the count of how many times this can counter the ability to move left. But apparently swap the other direction is okay. So, moves left counter. This is a different kind of moves left counter, which also could be named a moves left counter. So, it just counters 1 time the ability to move left. And then it does nothing else. So just move these to make 10 right there. And now a bunch of moves left counters, but this has an even different description. Counts how many times it can move left on its own and does so at the end of every turn. So let's end a turn. It moves left on its own. That's what the moves left counter does. So honestly, the ordering of that is spaghetti and I don't care. So now, naturally, we had a moves left counter, so we also need a moves up counter, a moves down counter, and a moves right counter. Also, it's a troll switcheroo because the top right isn't even the actual, like, we call it the actual move left counter, but this one is now the actual one. So we have a total of 9, but we still genuinely only have 2 moves left. So if I do this, and this, You can see that it passively moved to the right, and if I do this, I can clear the way, and that one moved down passively. The key move in here that's relevant to get such a high count, of course, is to swap. So if I swap something with something else, then both of their passives can take effect in useful ways. So let's make this move's left counter and swap it with the move's down counter. So we'll have a left passive move as well as a down passive move with this swap. There we go. Now we need to find another move that is equally as capable as that. So let's swap. Well, okay, first of all, like maybe let's talk about the description. This game is objects can move into each other. Now, of course, you don't know this is a Flame War topic unless you're freaking puzzle game discussion obsessed in some way. But there is in fact a community document attempting to summarize simultaneous objects moving into each other, which by the way ends it in a way that, Baba kind of does this. Not quite, but I mean, is it really hell? It's just Baba. Is Baba really hell? Anyway, so the situation where that happens is like if I swap this moves up with the moves right, they would be trying to move into each other. Yeah, I didn't have any behavior defined for that. Come on. I mean, okay, if they merge into an upright counter, that would be amazing, but I don't have the coding aspect or need to do that. So anyway, the move you're supposed to do in this situation is swap the moves up with the moves down counter, and both of them can, this one can move upwards, while the other one can move down. And also the left one is passively adding another one to the counter. So, that was the end of the game. Believe it or not, that there's just 35, actually 34 levels, I think. But I made the entire game, like, also the sound effects, which involved, like, some fun mic tapping in here and there. It's genuinely shocking to me because I usually don't have that kind of motivation. I'm honestly very, very sad about life. Despite having a bunch of month-long projects, as you know, I have tons of projects that are in some form of very, very sad development hell. And unfortunately, I hate programming, as you know, so it's kind of a miracle that I get anything done at all. Meanwhile, none of the ideas I had for this project ever existed at all, and then like in 2 days, like almost all of it existed. Now to be fair, I had to spend even more days doing bug fixes and wasting time. Still. Anyway, regulars to my channel should recognize this souvey, which is a puzzle designer who's made standalone games with custom maps, including one which was a collab and very much the opposite of what happened with this game. In souvey, I did like no programming work, just suggested ideas and worked together to come up with the premise and some puzzles with it. And I think this turned out really well. It's super unique in its color inversion and like eyes theming and stuff. But this time, Chris or whatever VA had to suggest some really good joke ideas that I was like, damn, now I have to program that. So while I'm glad how much this expanded the game, like there wasn't even a real ending. So it may be fun to try to guess what aspects were me in these 15 levels and which were by Souvey. Make your predictions now. Also, I believe this is the time. I don't mention, okay, so yeah, I don't mention it anywhere, but a level select unlocks at level 35, but it really should have unlocked earlier, and I am aware, of course, that this lets you set up the encounter counter at a much lower level, but that just isn't interesting enough, I think. I'm not gonna force a third refresh. Anyway, Swevy is not responsible for any of the level design, so the fact that you... That was... Good job, computer. Yes, my computer sometimes does that. Anyway, the fact that this move counter starts at 10, so you have to be annoying, is completely my fault, because Savi was not responsible for level design. Also, though, we have mystery counter, which counts some unknown thing. Not really sure what it counts. And the counterintuitive counter, which counts the count of counters 2 counts away and 1 count away from that new position or perpendicular direction. Okay, this isn't very intuitive. What a nightmare. So... like, you could screw around, see what's getting highlighted. But also, maybe it's pretty obvious what's getting highlighted here. So... well, if it's not obvious now, maybe by the next level it'll be obvious. But also, I've read people sometimes get stuck on this level, and maybe it's not... I was like, 9 target, I mean... yeah, it's so easy to get in the middle. And here's the moves left spam level. If you don't know what these counters do yet, don't worry. I'm not going to explain it later. It'll be really obvious later. Anyway, so here is a bunch of moves left counters, as you're familiar, but also count so many times the counters moved left this encounter, which is pretty freaking useless. Because it only counts, doesn't do anything. I mean, like, look. And also, you're countered for moving left, and that spends a bunch of your left moves. But if you use one of the passive left moves, you can actually make that counter go down while still moving, so that's pretty useful. However, total's still 5. This level is honestly a mess, and there's something inconsistent and weird about how this starts with 4 moves left for no good reason, even though 4 is not the amount of times left counters move, but I think no one notices that. Also, more importantly, swapping the opposite direction, you now need to use that part of the description, because it's not going to counter you if you move rightwards and swap. So we can do this. And so, okay, this one is still countering left passive moves, but... And yes, the visuals for this are god-awful on purpose. Now, both of these move left counters can actually move left now. Like, the passive ability works for both of them. So, just to win now, all you need to do is just swap. Because swapping will add 2 to the move count. There we go. Welcome to Chess Battle Advanced. So this level is a crap. It even uses a swap counter, which no level ever uses again, because I wanted to make this level restricted as hell for some reason. You got a moves up counter that barely does anything at all. It counters the ability to move upwards. I could have done something more interesting with these, like, which honestly is a common thing. Definitely this game prioritizes having a lot of meme moments over having actual levels. What if we got the Maxwell's Puzzling Demon creator to make actual levels for this that use actual mechanics instead of memes? Anyway, there's like so many different ways to make 43, but now we have 100, which is insane, and I have seen people just like get stuck on this. Also, there's a meme moves left counter doesn't do anything. That's the fake one. But yeah, you could try to get this high, and I feel like I made this... Oh, by the way, I like this counter. The 1 counts counter plus the 2 counts counter. Counts the count of counters that are 1 count away from this counter. It was definitely king the piss with that one. You know, I didn't expect people to take this level so seriously. Or that it would probably cause a bunch of rage quits of people thinking that this is, like, attainable. It's not intended to look attainable, but, like, I believe I've seen screenshots of, like, 70 or so on this level, but you can't get anywhere close to 100. You have to read that this over the counter, which counts 1 count diagonally up left and 1 count diagonally up right from this counter, there's a mystery mechanic. So what can this thing do in a video game? I mean, you could do this from the start position as well. So, like, let's just imagine this thing going up like in a normal game of chess. So there you go. And 102. Whoops. Amazing that I have to do this, by the way. Good job, me. Good job. Apparently getting to 100 is difficult. Okay, I've never struggled like this on here. Okay. Alright, now this level sucks. I will just say it. So the intent here, I think most people do it anyway, though, is... you promote to the counterintuitive counter instead to get the 4. But there's solutions where you can get it to be a queen. I mean, an all-line counter, not I don't know what I would just said there. And it's just like, whoops, I didn't mean for that to be the case, but yeah, and I'm not fixing it. Unfortunately, there's still no reason to promote to a mystery counter or a diagonal counter, and I feel like there could have been a level that did that, but, you know, it's just not real. Anyway, now we have a turn counter. Counts the count of turns taken this encounter, so this also counts, like, here. Although the turn counter has a white background, and the total does not count things on white background, so that doesn't update. But still, you can enjoy it. And I also think it's funny that this gives you, like, a spamming the keys award. But now, we have this also a turn counter. After this moves, turns the non-white background, counter above it. And, like, of course, get this because, like, what the meaning of turning one of these counters would be is a little bit weird. But clearly you have to go here and, boom, turn it. Now, there's a ton of turn counters for some reason. And also, the counter is back, and the counter is back. Let's turn one of them. Oh, no. Well, none of them turn the correct direction. Okay, so, like, one of these clearly has to be different in some way, right? So, you just gotta hover over them, or something, and watch for changes. Oh, there's a change there. turns counterclockwise, turns counterclockwise, turns counterclockwise. I was considering whether like this should actually like fill the screen with the turns, but I CBA. It's good enough. And also there was a suggestion in the comments, which I also thought of before releasing the game. That's probably not true. I think I thought of it during the time in which I released the game and read that comment, which is still early. Anyway, point is, the suggestion was to put a hyphen instead, like, so that it would be, like, less visible and would probably take up the same amount of spacing, but, like, I think this is good enough, and it was more funny when I watched me and Souvey watched a certain someone hover over everything like 4 times and still not see it. So the fact that it was more obvious actually enhanced that watching experience. Anyway, here is actually just more of a normal level. I just needed 20 target. Maybe the level shouldn't have been as normal, but still. You can turn these and it will only count the numbers that like are just like readable, like the correct angle. So we got some meme fives that will never work out. And if you just do these, you'll notice you can't, like, there's no other 5 that does it for you, but we have 2 moves left. So actually, the goal is to turn that 2 times in a row. So you do this, this, and there we go. Now, we have 8 moves to make a target of 9. That doesn't seem very possible. But the turn counter is here for some reason, so how about... Okay, now we have 1 turn left. So let's turn this 6 into a 9 when the target is infinity. Speaking of infinity, sorry about the blood stains on the grid today. So this total counter is so I feel like I don't know. This is something I honestly probably want to change the most of this game, is that people are not realizing what this implies, that the total counter is now no longer a no white background, which means that even in the hover you can see that it now counts itself as part of the total. So now if I move this, it counts itself as part of the total, so it's just checking +1 over and over again. Which also means, like, that's just +1 updating fast, tick after tick, right? But now if I put both of the totals in the same thing, it's ×2ing itself every tick. Which goes insane pretty quickly. And it's gonna hit the integer cap, which is at E plus 300 or so. That's 2 infinities. Just as a natural consequence of the rules of the game. Now we have a 3 infinity, and infinity moves down, countering as well. To do this is it's just so easy. You need to swap upwards, but the whole joke is that, look, the target just counted itself, and we're just gonna use the target as for its total. Anyway, here is the worstest level in the game. It's so messy. There's all these new counters, double move counter, great new counters, discounter. There's a shop. All shop parts 50% off. The end counter strikes again with the end counter, which counts the count of counters the count ends. Like, the end counter is still here. A counter argument, which a lot of people need nowadays. But also the censorship counter, which has a lot of ends in its description. Very, very notable. And a counter-attacking counter. If counter-attacking counter is attacked by counter, counting attacker counts as a counter-attack in this counter. Anyway, this level almost didn't make it in. Like, it wasn't invented until, like, the very end as well. It was, like, the second last thing added in the game, and this level I'm so happy about it, even though it's terrible. Puzzle games always should have one terrible level because of all the nonsense you need to read through. But also, of course, if you hover the censorship counter, you can see that the total is very high, but it's still about 300 off. And even though I say the volume counter isn't none in this puzzle, if you can set it to none, and it only increases it by like 50 or like so, something like that, it's not relevant enough. It's like 60 actually, but anyway. Another thing that I'm very glad about is how many people they do notice the strange layout. Looks like an unapproachable mess, but you do only have 1 move left, so it's not like it's massively complicated. And for the paranoids, yes, it's a genuine moves left counter. And also that it's hard to get the censorship counter description out of it. You need to do this weird thing with the cursor, with to get it out. And even then, it seems like this is completely useless and doesn't do anything. You can go back to previous levels and enjoy the censorship counter, but like it doesn't do anything on the other end counter levels, even though it drastically inflates that end counter. Like, one of the things that makes this especially bad, but in a good way, is that the interesting behavior is not, like, yes, the double move counter is coded to add +2 instead of +1 like the move counter, but there's no new behavior here. It's just a thing you should already know, a thing that you've done before, just an interaction pair that you've not really thought about, that isn't relying on all the dumb new counters. Also, I like that this, when you hover over this, makes a smiley face. That has nothing to do with the puzzle, by the way. In fact, you might see something other that's also suspicious about this level layout. And people do notice this, and then they stop doing anything with it after the first use of it, and just shove other counters up there, which is insane to me. But like, so they promote that or something. Then they see other things could promote. I don't know. The thing that you have to realize about this level, I'm just like, this is already a big hint the way I'm leading towards this, but I'm just gonna say a solution at this point. Look very carefully at this total number as I'm making this move. You only have one move in this level, of course. So that thing went from 600 to 800-ish. Why did that happen? It's because of all of the ends on the promotion menu. And notice that you can't mess with the tooltip right now. So, if you combine this with having the censorship counter on screen, you have the solution to the level. So, let's do it. Over the counter. See, I'm really good at this game. You know this game is a speedrun? Let's watch a speedrun strat. Oh my god! Unfortunately, that level has been memed multiple times. I mean, it's funny to watch all these exploits. Like, look at this. Like, cut off the browser width. And here's another cheese. Is this the backwards long jump of move counters? Anyway, in this level, we have the reasons to feel sad about the world counter, which I will not explain. But it is continually going up. Also, the global offensive counter. When a counter strikes, the global offensive counter counts it by 1. Anyway, so what we have here is, here's the real counterattacking counter, which can attack a random counter. So, okay, itch sound loading is ruining this, but bam, bam, bam. Hey, it went down, but wait, we have no moves left. Okay, so you can RNG it until it deletes the moves left counter, like that, and then also we need to delete this counter. Well, that failed. Also, if the counterattacking counter attacks the counterattacking counter, counterattacking counter attacks the counter that attacks this counter, and both of them get deleted, which also counts for +2 on the global offensive counter. But anyway, there's like better ways to do this level. Like, you could just put this in there, and then it won't count for the top anymore. Here's the final puzzle, but also, an even better way is to swap here, then you have multiple opportunities, because the move counter also moves, and that +1s it. So, and that plus global offensive counter means you don't have to make any more moves, which, by the way, it was the Pink Stumbling creator that found that solution. Probably others as well, but, like, I didn't know it myself. Anyway, here is the final puzzle with the move counter, move counter. This counter counters the counter to moving a counter while moving a counter. Only have 3 moves. Okay, so, what does it mean to move a counter while moving a counter? Well, you see, it actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the thing is, you could not do this in any other level. This specifically counters this. So how can you move a counter while moving a counter? Well, please remember that there are 2 ways to move a counter in this game. Either with this keyboard or with mouse. And keyboard, you do not start this meme off with a keyboard. You start off with a mouse meme. See, right now I am moving a counter. So what does it mean to move a counter while moving a counter? Well, let's move it with the other input. And now, I'm still moving a counter, and I have 0 moves left. When I drop this, it's going to go to -1 moves left as I finished moving a counter. And this allows that to go to 9. And that's all. Hey, there's a poke all toads counter, and a total counter. Also, this toad doesn't have a description for some reason. I don't know why that is. Anyway, chess battle advanced. Alright, so let's quickly go through which levels are souvey's fault and which are mine. So the moves left counters, originally there were only 2. The normal one and the meme one that moves passively, originally only the 2 of them existed. And then later on this level was edited to have one of the other types, but so I was like, oh, when were those are coming? And, you know, I just had to implement those. They're originally not much chess memes in the game. There was this, which has this line of text. You cannot see it, but you can actually see there's a different hover effect of a description that mentions, oh, the diagonal should be a bishop counter. I removed that because it made the later chess meme too obvious. It's actually still readable. But suggesting to make these counters is basically souvey's fault. But I wrote the descriptions and titles for this, including the rookie designer pun, which is, by the way, somehow missable. So I had that pun in there, and then so I was like, oh, well, hey, you should add this to the counterintuitive counter. So I just did that. Which, by the way, makes things a little bit silly to credit because of how intertwined the influence is. But here's like the level that shows all the moves left meme counters. It was actually kind of annoying to code this one, but I mean, I had to after I heard of the idea. It was not souvey's idea in any way to just make literal chess. However, the promotion was souvey's idea to actually go and implement that mechanic. Now, the turn counter is also souvey's idea. Of course, this is a pretty useless level in terms of how this never gets used ever again. But I do believe I improved on the execution. It would have been just like press A or B, and it's just like, just no. It makes it too obvious if it's just that. So I made this design instead where you have to look at descriptions, and perhaps it's a little bit foreshadowed, I guess, but I'm still very happy about how this went. On the topic of having a larger grid, I briefly considered having a level where like there was a literal counter that blended in the background with the literal same text and color as and then it would be like out here in the grid or something, but I feel like there could be hints of it because other counters could have seemingly the wrong value. So that probably wouldn't have actually been a bad level, but I didn't 100% know the theming that would have been anyway. This level's pretty normal. Now, I did come up with, only in the sense that it was a word that I knew I could meme with. I wanted to get in counterclockwise, but I didn't know how to make it in an interesting, funny way until that idea of this word ambiguity just made everything like completely justify it. The rotation number memeing, those were mine, although it's hard to say that was my idea, as in newly minted for this game, when I freaking used them for mine super cursed memes in the past. And it's also not unique among media, but it's nice, like, it's always nice to see when cursed stuff can happen in unexpected context, and because this level was infinity, it made sense to make a 2 infinity meme. So this level is my handiwork. There's also a weird bug, by the way, where if you do this, and then this, it does it instantly. It's because of the spaghetti code, hard-coded stuff. When you make game intending it to be short, you can get away with more hard-coding stuff. Which, by the way, this infinity behavior is why there's no level editor. Like, I didn't even try, because of the hard-coding stuff with the rotation. This level is not the best, but of course, it's my handiwork. Okay, so, here, there used to be a much worse level 48 that I made, and this new level 48 is still my handiwork, so I've had no part in it. But I did get the feedback that the level was like overly cluttered and not particularly obvious what to do, which is why I did absolutely nothing to change it so that the vibe could remain. Like, I remember realizing this stuff, and then when I was building it, because you need a ton of end counters, otherwise if you only had one end counter, there's too many ways to like mess with it. And, you know, I basically needed to have multiple and tons of end counters. And when I was making it, I was like, at some point realized, like, and I wanted to spam the center as well, to have tons of variety of counters, to make it not so obvious that it was the over-the-counter that you would need to move. But then, at some point, I realized how hard it was to get the description out, and realized how insane it was that a cursor maze is implementable within the system. So I'm very happy about this little game, because it almost didn't make it in. there was another counterattacking counter level that preceded it, that it replaced that was bad, that I mentioned before. And the word counterattack did appear in my personal ideas, but I just never came up with any good idea until Savi suggested that to me. I was like, what could that be? And then came up with this terrible random idea, which was still good because I mean, we could probably be credited for this as well, like the confusion between the counterattacking counter and this. And of course, you can counterattack the counterattacks. All right. Oh, by the way, with the high counters, I should mention that some people in the comments have really gotten some unnecessarily high counters. Okay, so the history of this level is it was actually an interaction, basically a bug that I discovered even when the game only had 35 levels. There was just this bug where I did this, and all this counter does is that it unfixes a bug. But the theming is so good, and realizing that it could be named move, counter, and actually, like, that's just the perfect name for it is so excellent. There's also a thing where you can duplicate counters effectively, and that's kind of funny. It's not even needed, and okay, oh yeah, also Savu made the idea of, like, letting it move at -1. It actually wasn't originally the case. The duplicate counter bug was what you're supposed to do, but actually this -1 is funnier because it says counters your ability to move at 0, and it's just perfect that this description, it's always been like this. The fact that it's move at 0 and not 0 or less is highly relevant here, and that's just great. Even though it's something I really didn't intend. Toad level. So, this used to be called the sum counter. In fact, early on in one of the tutorials, it actually still calls it the sum counter. Here. Same thing with the volume counter, actually. There's one place that still calls the volume counter, that was later renamed. And so, it's literally just, it changed from sum to total so I could make a toad pun. That's all. Also, fun fact, this final level used to be called End, and that ruined the game. Like, it's because END has an end counter thing, and I didn't even notice for a long time. The game was, like, actually unplayable for, like, 8 hours, and I didn't realize. That's the insane amount of paranoia involved in there. Similar was the time when the promotion menu didn't, like, it was counting the ends in there. Ugh, this is the paranoia of that. Also, there's a secret level 0, which is, like, auto-generated stuff. It's kind of fun. It's not programmed at all to be that interesting, though. I think this should work. Yep, there we go. But again, it's more playing the space of, like, there are actually interesting puzzles you can make that aren't memes. And, like, it also changes when you restart, which is pretty bad. But just a minor fun toy there. One last thing. There is actually a really bad bug in this game that I didn't notice until I'm not going to fix it. It's too funny, but you can also do it very easily by accident. You could do it, like, here when you're promoting and spamming, because so the glitch is if you go here, go off the screen while selecting a counter, then come back, that seems to work. But if you do it on another counter, it gets it stuck on the level. It's just ew. They become ghost counters effectively. Like, there should only be one ghost counter at a time, but this adds, and it's so ew. It's terrible. But it leads to some real fun screenshots, and it's honestly, it probably adds to the game that this is here, even though, like, there is some badness in that people think that, like, it might be a part of the game. But and also, when you restart, those get dumped in as extra counters on the grid. Like, it's so bad that this happens. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure it's obvious this is a glitch. And also, like, the horizontal sizing also exists. It also randomly generates counters, like, the same way as in level 0. And it also stays around per level. This has allowed for some incredible screenshots and toads, so I'm not fixing it. Anyway, oh yeah, Salvi suggested a mine counter. That certainly never happened. So again, insane, weird spark of motivation made this game. I didn't really make it because I'm not motivated most of the time, and I don't really know how this game came into being. Maybe we could make a sequel. Probably not. If there's gonna be a sequel, probably we'll have an entirely different concept, like timers that get more cursed. But yeah, I'm incredibly happy with it. Like, how many jokes are packed into these 50 levels. Anyway, Chess Battle Dance, bye.